Something strange happens when an empath wakes up spiritually. You don't suddenly become calm. You don't instantly find peace. And you definitely don't feel blessed at first. You break, because awakening is not a reward, it's an exposure. One day you begin to notice things you ignored your entire life, the energy in conversations, the hidden intentions behind people's kindness, the emotional manipulation disguised as love. Your mind starts connecting patterns you once dismissed, and suddenly, everything feels different. The people around you haven't changed, but your awareness has. That's when the uncomfortable realization hits you. You were never surrounded by as much honesty as you believed. Empaths spend years trying to understand everyone, trying to be patient, trying to be kind even when they're being drained. You gave chances, then more chances, then even more chances, because you believed that if you were understanding enough, if you were supportive enough, people would eventually treat you the same way. But awakening destroys that illusion. You begin to see something brutal. Some people didn't misunderstand your kindness. They depended on it. They depended on your silence, your patience, your willingness to absorb emotional chaos without complaining. And the moment you start questioning that dynamic, things shift. People who were comfortable around your weakness suddenly become uncomfortable around your awareness because awareness changes your behavior. You stop ignoring the tension in conversations. You stop laughing at things that feel wrong. You stop pretending certain behavior doesn't bother you. And that makes people uneasy. Here's the first shocking truth awakening forces you to face. Some people preferred the version of you that didn't see clearly, the version of you that kept giving without limits, the version of you that stayed quiet to keep the peace, the version of you that ignored red flags to avoid conflict. But the awakened empath can't live like that anymore. Your mind becomes sharper. You notice manipulation in small words. You feel dishonesty in subtle energy shifts. You detect emotional games long before they fully unfold. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. That's the moment the empath begins transforming, not into someone colder, but into someone who refuses to betray themselves just to keep others comfortable. This stage feels messy, confusing, frustrating, sometimes even painful, because awakening doesn't just expose others, it exposes you too. The moments you stayed silent when you shouldn't have, the times you tolerated things that damaged your peace, the relationships you kept alive long after they stopped being healthy. And that realization can be heavy. But it's also the beginning of real power, because the empath who wakes up spiritually stops asking one question: why do people treat me like this? And starts asking a much more powerful one: why did I allow it for so long? That question changes everything. Because the moment you start answering it honestly, your life can never go back to the way it was before. And that's where the real awakening begins. Before awakening, you thought your ability to feel everything was a gift. You walked into a room and instantly sensed tension. You could hear pain behind someone's voice, even when they said they were fine. You noticed sadness in people who were smiling. And because you felt it, you believed it was your responsibility to carry it. So you listened longer than you should have. You supported people who never supported you back. You drained your own energy trying to lighten emotional burdens that were never yours. You called it compassion. But awakening forces you to face a difficult truth. Feeling someone's pain doesn't mean you're responsible for fixing it. For years, many empaths confuse empathy with obligation. If someone was struggling, you felt guilty walking away. If someone was negative, you stayed and tried to help. If someone was emotionally unstable, you became their emotional support system. But here's the reality awakening exposes. Some people are not looking for healing. They are looking for somewhere to dump their chaos. And empaths were often the easiest place to do that. The awakened empath starts noticing a pattern. Certain people only reach out when they are struggling. Certain conversations leave you mentally exhausted. Certain relationships revolve entirely around their problems, their emotions, their needs, and suddenly something clicks in your mind. You realize you weren't being compassionate. You were being consumed. That realization changes the way you move through the world. You begin observing emotions instead of absorbing them. You listen, but you no longer drown in other people's storms. You care, but you stop sacrificing your peace to prove it. This is where many people misunderstand the awakened empath. They say you've become distant. They say you've become cold. They say you've changed. But what actually happened is simple. You stopped abandoning yourself to rescue others. You start protecting your energy with intention. You allow people to experience their own emotions without rushing to fix everything. You stop volunteering to be the therapist, the rescuer, the emotional shock absorber, and something unexpected happens. Your mind becomes quieter. Your energy becomes lighter. Because for the first time in your life, you're not carrying emotional weight that doesn't belong to you. The awakened empath still feels deeply. But now there is a boundary between compassion and self-destruction, and that boundary changes everything. After spiritual awakening, something unexpected begins to happen. You start feeling alone, not because people disappear overnight, not because the world suddenly rejects you, but because your awareness no longer fits the same spaces it once did. Conversations that used to feel normal now feel empty. Endless gossip, complaints, drama, people arguing over things that have no real meaning. Your mind starts asking deeper questions. Why do people pretend so much? Why do they hide their real emotions? Why do they keep repeating the same toxic patterns and call it normal life? Once those questions enter your mind, something shifts permanently. You can't go back to the old level of awareness. And that creates distance. You sit in rooms full of people and still feel disconnected. You hear conversations but feel no desire to join them. You watch people chase validation, attention, and approval, and it suddenly feels exhausting. At this stage, many empaths make a dangerous assumption. They think something is wrong with them. They start wondering if they are becoming antisocial, distant, or emotionally closed off. But the real truth is much simpler. You are no longer stimulated by shallow energy. Your mind begins craving depth, real conversations, real honesty, real connection, and those things are rare. Most people are comfortable living on the surface conversations, surface relationships, surface emotions. But awakening removes your ability to stay there, so loneliness shows up, and at first it feels like loss. Friends fade away, certain environments stop feeling right, even habits that once filled your time begin to feel meaningless. But here's the shift most awakened empaths eventually realize. Loneliness is not punishment. It's transformation. It's the space where your identity begins rebuilding itself, without noise, without pressure, without the constant influence of other people's emotions. In that silence, you start understanding yourself for the first time. Your values become clearer, your boundaries become stronger, your mind becomes more independent. And slowly, loneliness stops feeling like emptiness. It starts feeling like freedom, because once you experience the peace of being aligned with yourself, you stop chasing environments that require you to shrink just to belong. After a true spiritual awakening, something subtle but powerful begins to change. You stop trying so hard. For most of your life, you may have been the person who explained yourself too much, the one who tried to keep everyone comfortable, the one who softened your words so nobody felt offended. You managed emotions. You avoided conflict. You carried the invisible responsibility of keeping the emotional balance around you. But awakening slowly removes that habit. You start realizing something that most people never understand. Your job was never to manage other people's feelings about the truth. Once that realization settles into your mind, your behavior shifts. You stop over-explaining your boundaries. You stop defending your decisions to people who already misunderstood you. You stop shrinking your personality just to keep the peace. And the moment you stop doing that, your presence changes. Not because you're louder, not because you're aggressive, but because you're no longer desperate for approval. People can feel that. When someone is constantly seeking validation, it's obvious. Their words sound forced, their energy feels uncertain, their confidence looks fragile. But the awakened empathy carries a different energy. You've already faced your emotions, you've already confronted uncomfortable truths about yourself and your life. So you stop pretending. And that honesty creates a quiet kind of strength. You become someone who doesn't react to every emotional situation. You observe more. You speak less. To your words carry more weight, and something interesting begins to happen around you. Some people feel drawn to your presence. They sense stability. They sense authenticity. They sense that you're not playing the same emotional games most people play. But others react differently. Your calmness makes them uncomfortable. Your boundaries frustrate them. Your awareness exposes behaviors they would rather keep hidden. And that's when the awakened empathize. understands another difficult truth. Not everyone will like the version of you that respects yourself. Some people benefited from the old version of you, the one who tolerated too much, the one who stayed silent, the one who gave endless emotional energy without asking for anything in return. But that version no longer exists. Now your presence carries something stronger than kindness alone. It carries clarity, and clarity has a strange effect on people. Those who are genuine will respect it. Those who relied on your lack of boundaries will slowly disappear from your life. This is the stage most people never reach, not because they can't, but because it requires something most people avoid at all costs: radical honesty with yourself. After awakening, you start seeing patterns everywhere. The same emotional games repeating in relationships. The same toxic behaviors passed down through families. The same cycles. Oh, feckin' manipulation, guilt, and silent resentment that people call normal. For years you were part of those cycles, not intentionally, but unconsciously. You tolerated things that drained you. You stayed quiet when something felt wrong. You sacrificed your own peace just to keep others comfortable. But awakening changes that. You stop pretending certain behavior is acceptable. You stop excusing disrespect just to avoid confrontation. You stop allowing people to cross boundaries simply because you feel guilty saying no. And this is where the real transformation happens. You become the person who breaks the pattern. You refuse to participate in emotional manipulation. You refuse to reward toxic behavior with silence. You refuse to keep repeating the same painful dynamics that most people stay trapped in their entire lives. That doesn't mean you become cruel. It means you become clear. Clear about what you allow in your life. Clear about what you tolerate. Clear about the kind of energy you accept around you. And clarity changes everything. Some people will call you different. Some will say you've become distant. Some will accuse you of changing too much. But here's the reality they rarely admit. You didn't change. You stopped pretending. You stopped playing roles that were slowly destroying your peace. You stopped shrinking your awareness just to fit into environments that no longer matched your growth. And now you face a final choice. Because awakening is not just awareness, it's responsibility. Responsibility to live according to what you now see. Most people will wake up and still go back to the same habits. They'll ignore their intuition. They'll stay in draining relationships. They'll silence their own truth just to avoid being uncomfortable. But you don't have that luxury anymore. Once an empath truly wakes up, pretending becomes impossible. So here's the challenge. Stop returning to environments that require you to abandon yourself. Stop lowering your awareness just to feel accepted. And most importantly, stop ignoring the truth you already see. Because awakening didn't happen by accident. It happened because you were meant to outgrow the life that once held you back. Now the only real question left is this: are you brave enough to live like someone who is truly awake?